Hi everybody, iSlime here. Ooh. Okay, not iSlime here. Vyper here. Never done that before. Um, I wanted to make a video just breaking down some music. I've never really done that before. So today we're going to be going through my track Aquamarine, and I'm going to show you some of the things that I did, and just talk about some of the cool things in the track. So yeah, let's get started. Now first I'm going to talk about the drum beat here, and what you're going to notice here is that there are a couple different tracks, or basically all the parts of the drums into individual tracks. I usually make the main part of the song I'm working on in the pattern maker, and that goes for synth lines and bass lines, so they all end up being in one pattern, at least the main melody or the main thing I start with. So once I'm finally working on the track properly, I split all those by going to the pattern and saying split by channel. And so what that ends up doing is taking every single channel or pattern or part of the pattern and making it its own pattern. So it took the kick and made it its own, took the clean or the closed hats, and then the open hats, snares, the second snare, and the claps, all in their own tracks. So I basically put that all together kind of in a, not really a drum bus, but something close to that, I guess. And now we have some drums. So the kick sounds something like this. And it's pretty much just that repeating. We got the closed hats, which don't really sound good without the open hats. The open hats just add a little bit more space in between the rhythm. The hats are a little off time in certain spots, but that's to fit with the drum beat overall, and I'll show you how that works in a second. So with the snares, we have two different snares, and the way that works is we have this snare here, which has a little bit more reverb on it, a little bit more of a release on it, and we have more of a sharper snare here, which is a bit higher pitched, or I should say lower pitched. The other one's higher pitched. This one's a bit more snappy, so putting those together, there's a bit of a high reverb on them, and a little bit of a delay there too. There's also a clap, which just follows every second and fourth beat. Simple little clap, and put that all together with the snare, and you get this nice little high sound there. Now if we put this drum beat all together, we get something like this. Maybe if I only put the drums on, that would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? When I started making this track, I realized it kind of sounded like the default dance from Fortnite. Still kind of does. Later on, I have some percussion come in, and it's just in the form of these claps. Now these claps, I don't have all the original, but it's 5 different claps that I recorded myself. Just random things. Some of them are hitting my hands together like this. Some of them are hitting my hands together like lightly, and then cupping and hitting my leg, and just doing a bunch of things. There's, I think, 5 different sounds I used. I did more than that, but those are the ones I liked. And I put those all together at slightly different offset times, changed the pitch around a little bit, changed the reverb on some of them, and then I ended up combining them into one sound, editing them, putting a whole reverb on the compressed track, and that ended up becoming one clap sound that I used that was a bit more echoey and a bit more grand seeming. And I just use that on its own on the track when the vocal drop part starts, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And it comes in with just a few of the drum tracks to make this kind of smaller rhythm. Later, when the whole chorus and all the drum parts come in, we get this. It is actually a little bit snappier than normal. I also made this sort of copy of the drums just using closed hats, a kick and a snare using the plugin Bitbox, which is just kind of a chiptune-y drum synth thing. It's kind of cool. It's free. You can get it. It's just a cool little thing. It's very simple, but it has a lot of power in the little thing that it is. Simple little thing there. So I won't go into too much detail, but there is both a SFX bus, which just has a bunch of different things, risers, explosion sounds, different impact sounds, a bunch of cool stuff that way. And it just, it's just a bunch of sound effects that just help polish the track. I just realized that all the automation wasn't on, so some of it sounds a little bit different than it does in the final track, but generally these are all the sound effects for the track. We also have some white noise that just sounds something like this. And that just goes through the main chorus of the song just to basically add some high end, and just a little bit more rhythm, I guess, room, something like that. Just feels nice to have noise in a big chorus like that. There are 3 layers to the main lead melody. There's this main buzz, which is kind of the primary part of the lead. That's fun. Then there's kind of this high octave one. It's a little bit more dinky than the other one, and it's just kind of this analog sounding synth. It's not, but it sounds very analog. And then lastly, we have this low analog one that sounds very similar, but it is a completely different synth, but it does sound similar to the high octave one. It's just the low octave of the main melody. And then all together, that sounds like this. So a cool little thing. There's an extra step there, but I'm skipping that. Next we have kind of just an analog sounding bass, and this is just a little bit of extra rhythm. There's 3 bass lines actually to this, but this is kind of the more melodic sounding one. There's also a sub bass, and there's an actual real bass that I played that's in the song a little bit later. We then have this kind of xylophone synth thing. It's made of a bunch of different layers, and it's kind of this weird sounding thing, but it ended up working in the track, and I ended up using it. And then we have the primary chords. I actually used a good chunk of music theory in this, which I don't usually do. I just kind of go by feel of tracks, but I actually used music theory in this and a little bit of feel. It had a lot of different versions, but this is the one that I settled with that worked best in the track in the end. Oh, and then there's also these kind of plucked chords that are just in the track that are just a nice little bit of texture. In the main part of the chorus, they're kind of a little washed out, but they are there, and they just add a little bit of room in the background. So really that's all there is in the main chorus, or at least at the start. I expand upon this later in the track, and we'll take a look at that because there's not much more, but there's just little bits of elements that spice up the chorus later in the song. So for one, we have this kind of chiptune little NES kind of version of the chords. In the background, that's a version of the plucked chords, except they're sustained, and that just adds a little bit of an extra layer to everything. We also have the synth that originally started as being a very high, plucky thing that sounded kind of cool, but then I ended up putting all those notes together and made this kind of weird, I call it the UFO synth. It's kind of weird, but it fits in the song and kind of adds an interesting texture overall. Ooh. Ah. And then here's that real bass playing I was talking about as well. I ended up going and adding these slides and putting a lot of distortion on the bass, and it kind of had this cool feel to it, and it added a little bit of extra bass end that sounded kind of cool. There's a lot of reverb on that too. Kind of cool. Sounds kind of farty though. And that's really it. There's not too much more added to this. Oh, and the main, never mind, there is one more element, and this is the main element. This ended up being a synth where I pitched it down over time, and I ended up compressing it into its own audio file. Not compressing it, but putting it into an audio wave format versus being the MIDI, because it was more consistent. And I ended up copying that. It was originally an E note, and I pitched it at different notes, or at different semitones, I guess, and basically had this little synth note play, and that added a lot to the chorus. It sounds like this. Kind of sounds like a synthetic toad voice screaming for its life. And now we'll put the whole chorus together, and we get this. Ooh, yes, the piano. I forgot about the piano. Okay, so the piano plays at the start, and originally it's just a version of the chords that I showed you that was the kind of NES chiptune chords, but those were put into the piano. With a bit of, I don't know what it is, but offset notes, so instead of being all hit at one time, it goes into it. I ended up adding these bass notes to it, and then I ended up adding the main melody over top at a higher octave. It's not going to play because I turned it off. Then I have that play later in the song as well. I have it play just the same lower note part. So, I mean, whatever. So let's talk about the vocal chop for a second. Originally, this was me singing, and we actually can take part of this, and we can extend this out fully, and we can listen to some of it. It's kind of bad, though. I auto-tuned it so that it sounded better, but it's still kind of bad. Ugh.
What has happened to us? How come I can't wake up? Like how I know I used to.
I don't know, I was doing some weird voice with it too, but either way, it's not good on its own. I just took the best parts and basically just made a little melody out of it. It took a little bit, but eventually I got something I liked, and I just looped that 4 times. That first part kind of sounds like a turntable. I mean, that's really it. There's not too much more to it. There's little things like this where there's risers. This is automated with volume. I don't have that on right now, but this goes up. In the second chorus, I ended up removing just a little bit of the drums for a bit, and that just kind of made it impact in. Then you're like, wait, where are the drums? Ah, there they are. It throws you off a little bit, brings you back into interest, brings some interest back into the song. So it's kind of cool. There's automation and mixing stuff. Every time the chorus plays, I put on a heavy compressor, and then that just made it kind of, everything sit in a louder range, so the chorus seemed a bit more impactful than everything else. But there was mixing after the fact that also helped that as well. So that was just a little thing, and then I mixed that and changed it a little bit more after I had exported it. So a lot of the mixing and volume leveling and things like that I do after the fact in Adobe Audition. There's also some master volume stuff for more mixing. There's a few parts where there's a low pass filter on things. So here when the chorus hits, there's this low pass filter that just at the end of every chord, it goes down just to bring a bit of impact, or every 2 bars, I guess. You hear it dip? Just brings a little bit of impact to the next chord. So that's just a little bit there. There's also a part where the volume and the low pass filter go down before the chorus hit the second chorus, the first big grand chorus, and that adds a lot of impact right here. In the main chorus, I do not have the low pass filter because it doesn't need it with the amount of things that impact during the bigger version of the chorus. There just wasn't a lot going on in the first time you hear the chorus because a lot of layers are removed, so it kind of needed that to build a bit more impact than the other times the chorus hit. I'm really hating this autofocus right now, my god. Anyway, that's pretty much all of the track of Aquamarine. There's not much more going on. Everything else is just automation for sound effects and different risers and all that. But altogether, the track came out really well. This is one of the longest tracks I've worked on. Just fine-tuning, tweaking, and stuff like that. This is kind of a dancey, big pop song, so there's a lot of things that you need to get right to make it sound good. A lot of my other songs can have little mistakes in them. I mean, most of them have to be still pretty good, and not all of them are perfect. There's definitely things that are all kind of wrong with this. And even Aquamarine, I wish there was a bit more of an impact in the chorus. There are things that are lacking, but overall it turned out really well, and it surprised me when I had finished it. Anyway, let me know if you enjoyed this kind of video. I wanted to try something new. I never really made content that was music-based on my channel, that was actually looking at a song and kind of going through it and talking about how I made it. I just upload songs, add visualizers every once in a while. Just recently I uploaded my whole album. I suggest you listen to that, or watch the video and just enjoy the album. I just made it for fun. That's what I always do with my music. I have wanted to put my music onto places like Spotify and Google Play, YouTube Music, Apple Music, all those kind of places. And I might do that in the future, but there are a lot of songs that I have that have so many little mistakes in them, from just trial and error and trying things. Something like the song Fantasy. The middle of that song is just awful and I hate it. So I would love to fix that and make it a much better song. So I want to go through a lot of songs like that and just either remove sections that are bad or improve upon them and put those up on iTunes and things like that, so that you have premium versions of songs that could be better, and the ones that are already good will also be available. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me if you want any more of these kind of videos. I would love to know if you guys enjoyed it. But anyway, I'll be going for now, and I hope you enjoyed. See you guys later.